Welcome back, everybody. Thanks again for joining me. If you've ever been that person on the water where your gear starts to give you grief, you know how quickly it can ruin your day. So hopefully today I can show you how to take these things apart, get them cleaned up and back to working order, and save you some money and really help you get the most out of your reels. So here we go. All right, guys, first things first is you're gonna need a few things. Starting out here, I got a little kit, the Sabu Garcia kit. It's got some oil, it's got some grease, the wrench, some cleaner on it, but I don't use the cleaner, I actually use a bowl of soapy water. This Phillips and flathead screwdriver included here, oil, grease, and the wrench. Really, that's the tools you're probably gonna need. You might need something a little different. Most of these bait casters are really similar. Really similar once you take them apart. There may be a few instances, a couple proprietary things with some, but they all come apart pretty much the same way. I got a bowl of soapy water, got a bowl of clean water, got me some Q-tips, and paper towels. Lint-free, better, so you don't leave anything left over in your reel. And that's basically it. If I think of anything else while we're going, I'll make sure and stop and put it in there. So getting started, what I really like to do, I like to lay everything out left to right. That way when I'm putting it back together, it goes back together from right to left. And if you keep it in that order, it makes it really hard to screw it up when you're putting it back together. So this one, I got a little lever here on the bottom. I got to open it up and I twist it off. Now this side plate, depending on your manufacturer, can come off in a multitude of different ways. Some of them don't actually come all the way off. They stay attached so you can't lose them, but this one is that. In here you'll see just where your magnets are, or well, magnets, yes, centrifugal will be on the spool, but and you got a bearing in there. This bearing needs some attention. It needs some love every now and then. So all I'm going to do on it, well, first I'm going to take the Q-tip, give it a little clean out, try to get any grime that might be in there on it out. You can actually pop that bearing out, but it's got a retainer spring in there, and I've just found that if you screw that up, your reel's toast. So on this one, I can take off the magnets to get in there. Come on, baby. Make sure there's nothing in there or around there. It's all looking good. So now what we're gonna do, we're gonna put a couple of drops. You don't need a ton. A couple of drops. And then what I like to do is take that same Q-tip dead in the center of that bearing, and I'll spin it. Let that oil get down into the actual balls that are in there. Okay. Put the magnets back on. Part gets kind of tricky because the magnet wants to try to pull the screw away. Make sure these are cinched, not super tight, but cinched. If it starts to loosen up, the magnets will actually get closer to your spool and start affecting it when you're reeling, which I think is what was happening to the one that I tossed in the lake the other day because it was pissing me off. It started to reel real rough, like almost skipping a beat. And it would be like real smooth and then stiff, smooth and then stiff. And it just made it impossible to fish. And I had already taken it apart and cleaned it once. But it found a watery grave. A little donation to the fish gods, you know what I'm saying? All right, so side plate, now we can, left to right, it's there. Next is the spool. It should just come right out, it's supposed to. Ta-da. You'll notice on the spool we have another bearing. You can also see a lot of gunk that's kind of been up through there, building up in there. Take the paper towel, get that kind of cleaned off, both sides, right? And same thing here, a couple drops of oil in the bearing. Now the fun stuff, that's the easy part. Getting into the nitty gritty here. there's a lot to it. So a nut here attaches the handle to the drive shaft, and you have a little retainer on it. Another thing I would recommend is putting down something white piece of paper, white paper towels, something like that, to help you be able to see your parts better. Right, now nut coming off. A lot of times there's a little washer in there as well. Okay. I've talked about this before, but bearing counts and reels, it can be a scam sometimes. They'll tell you 12 bearings, things like that. Well, you got 4 bearings right here in the handle on reels like that. How much does that really affect the quality of what's going on inside here and all that? Right? Kind of a marketing gimmick. It does spin real smooth though, look at that. Dang. And I mean, you know, the feel of the handle when you're reeling in a fish, I guess it could feel better, but to be honest, absolutely unnecessary. Rant over. So you got this little flat spring here, keep tension on that, and then your drag star, just counter rotate and it'll come right off. All right, that inside, make sure there's nothing inside there. Sometimes there is a washer. Okay, here's your click mechanism, and there it is. There is a little washer inside of there. We're just gonna leave it for now. Then you have these 2 opposing curved washers. See that? Make sure they're oriented right when you put them back. And another flat washer. Let's see, I'm gonna take off the spool tension knob now. Careful with these, sometimes there's spring in there, things you don't wanna lose. This one, I believe, there's a little bearing in there as well. So we're gonna take that Q-tip and kind of clean it out. Give it a couple drops. Sometimes you just have a bushing in here. On the less expensive reels, it's generally a bushing, not a bearing. I also have a bearing here on the main drive shaft, and then on the inside is going to be the anti-reverse. This reel in particular has a plastic holder for the roller bearings in there. Do not take that out. If you have a reel like that and it's set up that way, it is a pain in the butt to get all them rollers back in the correct orientation to put your anti-reverse back together. Ask me how I know. Okay, so this side of the reel, we got 1 screw here, and then we have 3 more screws for this side of the side plate. I like to do this one first, so I don't accidentally, you know, dump all the parts out. Pay attention to your screws here. One might be longer than the other, you know, or you could have 3 that are similar and ones that's different. Make sure they're all going back in the right place. And this thing's filthy. It's one thing about fishing the ponds around here lately. The water is real scummy. It really shows on these white reels. All right. So side plate screws done. Very carefully pop this side plate off. You do not want to start losing parts. All right. Sometimes you can get them where they're real flat on the side. This one isn't that way, so I'm gonna have to figure out how I'm gonna do this. Hold tight. Don't fall. Oh, it wants to fall so bad. I'm gonna gently just let it lay. Okay. So again, there's the inside of that anti-reverse I was talking about. A little plastic piece with ball bearings. I accidentally popped that out the last time and all the rollers went everywhere. I was lucky enough to find them all, but it was unhappy. So instead, to get to this bearing, I'm just gonna tap it out. I'm gonna leave the roller bearing in there. Same deal, clean off all the old crud. What happens a lot of times, God, you say that a lot. What happens is all the dirt, the grit, the sand, all the microscopic things, they get in here with the oil and the grease, And they basically make like a rubbing compound or a paste. And that's what starts to wear out your bearings and your gears and stuff. So it's important to clean it before you put it back together and put some new grease on it. You don't want that dirt trapped in there. So again, just a couple drops. Use the Q-tip, kind of spin it around. Doesn't take much. You don't want to overdo it here, because then you'll just have a bunch of oil and grease inside of your reel, and it'll just get gunked up again. See that? That was all clear grease at one point in time. Yucko. Okay, so now that's where the soapy water comes in. And take it over to my bowl. Get over here. It's Dawn. Good enough to take grease off ducks. Good enough to take grease off of your fishing reel. Give it a little dunk. Probably should have not greased that one bearing before I just did that, so we'll put a little more oil on it when it's done. Give it a quick dry. All right, good and clean. So another thing we do, we're gonna put a little more oil back in there, and then we're also gonna oil the anti-reverse a little bit, just to help smooth it out. Don't worry, it won't affect the anti-reverse. It's still gonna work. That little piece I just pulled off on the drive shaft is just the slidey surface for that anti-reverse bearing. Now that it's wiped, I'll put it back in here. I'll actually give this guy a spin to get that oil moved around. All right, side plate 2 done. I'm gonna take that out so I don't forget. Okay. All right, first thing I do when I get to this part, I take these springs off. You do not want to lose those. All right. Now we're gonna take the big drive gear off. Not the drive gear, the main driven gear. And this part gets a little tricky because of drags, and all the drags are a little bit different, but essentially I just want to make sure that everything I take off of here goes back in the same order and orientation that I took it off. So this piece here, it's got a little like raised lip. I want to make sure that stays up. And my carbon fiber pieces. Not all of these will be carbon fiber. Sometimes they're nylon. Generally, the more expensive the reel is when you start ending up in the carbon fiber world. Be careful with it as I flip it all over the table. And one more. Come on, baby. Also be careful. You don't want to damage them. And then you also have another carbon fiber piece to the bottom. And now you got this nasty, yucky, I mean, you can see how dirty it is and stuff, gear. So we're gonna put that in our water. We're gonna let that soak for just a quick second while we take the rest of it apart. Next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take the drive gear, the little drive gear out, and it has this little plastic piece on it. Remember the orientation of that plastic piece. If you put it on upside down, it ain't gonna work right. But it also needs to be clean. It's got a ton of oil all over it. There, let's just get busy with it. Scrub a dub dub. Alright. Generally, on these plastic pieces, this little recess is for that drive gear. So if you do get it messed up a little bit, you can figure it back out. Just like so. All right, that piece. All right, this piece here, this is what re-engages your reel when you press your thumb bar. Make sure that stays in the same orientation. If you flip it like this, your reel ain't gonna work. And then here you got the gear for your worm drive. A little bit harder to clean, you can't really take it off, so I'm just gonna give it a little bit of soapy water and then wipe it with the paper towel. Again, that stuff just collects dirt and grime and all that, and it will just eat away at the gears in here, and then it makes it feel like there's sand in there almost. Excess out of there. All right, and that's about as far as I go. There is another bearing in here, but I can get oil to it from here. The least I can do, I think there's a bearing underneath the drive shaft as well. I'm not gonna take that apart. I don't wanna go that deep, but I will get some oil down in around there to seep in, and oil in this one as well. So this is the important spots where bearings are. You know, the more bearings you have on the shaft of the spool, the drive shaft, all that, that's where a lot more of your smoothness comes from. You know, so when you're talking, you know, bearing shafts, a spool shaft, all that, you know, you can get up there around that 7 or 8 mark. But when they're like, oh, this one has 14 bearings, just know that 4 of them are included in the handle. You can just pretty much take 4 of them out there and not get gimmicked, if you will. All right, so there it is. That part's done. Put some grease on this worm drive gearing. And how I like to do it, I just get it going, I rest it on there, and just a little bit of grease at a time. Right? I've got a pretty decent amount, and then I just back and forth. And I get a good, nice amount of grease on there. Right? Pretty simple. Guess I probably better clean this one. Let's go ahead and clean this guy off now. And you're not going to get all this stuff off. I mean, I guess maybe if you really wanted to sit here all day and this is what you wanted to do, but I've got like 4 of these to do. I'm not going to spend my whole day. But if you can get the majority of it off, it still helps you out in the long run. You know, I know a lot of us, we don't have all the disposable income in the world. So when you have a reel, you know, you need to take care of it. If you're one of the people that just is fortunate enough to have the money to just replace a $200 reel when it breaks, then I'm proud of you. Good for you. The rest of us lay folk, though, that ain't us. We gotta learn how to take care of this stuff so it lasts us a while. There you go. Comes out pretty clean. So, getting it put back together. Put this guy back on there. Take our drive gear. This part's a little tricky because you got to be able to get it in the hole and get the plastic piece on the 2 posts. So, get it in there. All right. And then we got to remember that the main gear had a piece of carbon fiber on the bottom. Same thing on the gear, grease. Just kind of spin it around a little bit, just putting a little bit of grease all the way around. And once it's good, just give it some spins. Let it really coat both of those gears. You can kind of look at it too, like this still seems a little bit dry to me. So I'm gonna go ahead and put a little more. There we go. Now we're starting to get some buildup. Get some on there. All right, easy peasy. Put the drag back together. This one's got a couple little ears on it. Got to make sure they fit in that gear the right way. Yep. Now for your springs, again, be careful. You end up flopping that thing over and knock everything out. That'd be a good thing. Okay, Now that that's complete, I can continue on with the side piece. Side piece, he says. Nice. Side plate. I go ahead and put the sleeve in there for the anti-reverse. Just makes it easier putting this thing back together. And just very carefully put it on there, trying not to disrupt those springs. If you get to a point where it's not just really going on there like it should, like that one went on there easy, take a minute, make sure you got everything lined up in there right. Don't just go trying to force it on there, end up ruining your reel. Back with the screws. Ooh, see, careful now. You'll notice that screw, oh, hold on, I'll show you. This screw, oh yeah, is different from the other three, like I was talking about earlier. So make sure that you're getting them in the right spot. Now that we've got that back in, we can take the bearing, slide it back over the top. A little dirty on the outside there. Let's see. And then we just start the process back for the handle. Washer. Those two washers that create almost like a spring by being pre-bent. Go back on. The old click mechanism that makes your drag star click. Drag star itself. This part can be a little tricky. You get it going on there and then it gets to a point where it just wants to spin. All you gotta do is hold the level wind. Get your finger in there and hold it, and you can crank it down on there. That level wind will hold it. Oops. Okay. Another washer. Excuse me, not another washer. That guy. Potty mouth. Can't be saying swear words, son. Okay. And the bolt. Now, do not cross thread this. I've been down that road before. You will be pissed off at yourself when you ruin your reel. There's no fixing that. So, I got it on there good. Now, I like to set this piece on there. It's not tight enough yet. See how the hole doesn't quite line up? So I need to put it one more notch the other direction so that I can get a good cinch on it. Alright, so now, again, being very careful, I'm going to cinch that up. Oh, I still missed it. Okay, we'll go back one more. And it's just a little tiny bit more. You don't have to go crazy here. You know, as dudes, we like to cinch down on everything, but coming in the field of work I come from, it's caused way more problems than it has good by trying to force things like that. Broken valve stems, you know, all that kind of fun stuff. Breaking bolts off in engine blocks or whatever it is. Let the ego go a little bit sometimes, boys. There we go, spinning, we're good. All right, is that? All right, spool tension, we're just gonna leave that loose for now. Cool. All right, spool goes back in, like so. Now there's, all right, that little pin there, where am I at? It lines up on the bottom side of that main drive gear. There's 4 slots. So if it's not going in there, you just gotta rotate it a little bit and it'll find its home. There we go. And then side plate. So it's all put back together, working. Check it, check the functionality, make sure your thumb bar is working. You know, give yourself some tension on it. Crank down your drag. All right, and then there's just one last step for this, and that's getting grease in that worm gear and kind of cleaning it out. So I take the Q-tips and I just try to get as much of that old grease out as I can. Nice and shiny. Okay, I just take some grease and I put it down in on that worm gear. Got a bunch of these. And that's it. This thing should be good to go. Get some line on it and get to casting. Ooh, wait, one more point. This little guy right here, that's the tooth that goes in on that worm gear. If you ever find that that worm gear quits moving, likely this got backed off, or the tooth in there is actually getting wore out. And what you can do is you can take this little piece off and you can put a little shim in there, right? Just a little piece of paper, like a hole punch paper, and screw it back on there tight, and all of a sudden your worm gear will work again. You can save you make that reel last you even a little bit longer. So, all right, guys, that's it. Hopefully this gives you some insight on how to maintain your reels, keep them functioning for a really long time. One thing I'd like to add is I do this when I first buy a reel. They come from the factory pretty dry, and I've had it where they just start screaming within just a few minutes of use, and I take them home and I clean them up and they start to sound a little more normal. So don't be afraid to take it apart when you first get it. You know, you wouldn't buy a car and run it dry, right? So put some grease, put some oil in there, and it'll last you for a long time. You don't want to be in that position where you're on the water and it's ruining your day and you get irritated and throw in the water. So I definitely did that the other day, and made me realize I need to come home and take my stuff apart, maybe do my part, and they'll work a little better. So if you have any questions, hit me up down below for sure. Throw some comments in there. If you have a better way of doing it or better ideas, please. It's all good for all of us to know how to do this kind of stuff, and that's what I really want to do with this channel more than anything. As opposed to I just want everybody to be able to have fun, to enjoy their stuff. You know, we're all hardworking people. We spend a lot of money on this, and I don't want anybody to be bamboozled or anything like that. So let's help each other out, and let's continue to grow fishing. I think the state of bass fishing right now is kind of in a little bit of turmoil. We need to get back to what it really is, and it's catching those little green fish and making ourselves happy, you know. So let's keep that going. Till next time, peace.